Hi everyone, this is Elena of the Witches Box, and I'm here today with another episode of Witch Booktube. And today we're going to be talking about two books, and these two books were part of our March Witches Book subscription send out. So here they are. They're both on Chaos Magic. One is The Chaos Protocols by Gordon White, and the other one's Hands On Magic by Andre Vidamus. A lot of you have heard of these books. These books have been making the rounds for a while. I chose these two books for a couple of reasons that are relevant, I think, a little to our dialogue here at the Witches Box YouTube channel. One, obviously, the intention of the Witches Book subscription is to send out books that are meaty, that have really great information, that will continue to advance your education as a witch. The other reason for choosing these books is that in both books, there are techniques that I thought would be really interesting and important to learn and have in your toolbox. And in one of these books, and I'm going to talk about each book individually, but in one of these books, there's an example of something that I want to see more of in books that share spell work with you. I don't know that this book did it in the best way possible, but it was an example nonetheless, and I wanted to have a dialogue with our book coven about this particular, I don't know that I want to call it a formula in a book, but it feels like a formula that I think we need to do more of. So I'm going to talk about that. And then there's another reason. There are a couple of other reasons for choosing these books. Some of them are going to be a little invisible to all of you, but I'm going to try to explain it as much as possible. We've been in business now for over 3.5 years, which is an amazing thing. It feels like a very long time, and then it also feels like not very long at all. My intention and my mission with the Witches Box is to continue to facilitate spiritual deepening for witches. And I'm in a constant state. You've heard me say this before. If you subscribe to our newsletter, I've said this before, that I'm in a constant state of assessing are we really meeting that mission? Are we really doing that to the best of our ability? And a lot of times the answer is no. And so part of the evolution of this business looks like, let's get closer and closer and closer to that. And so this year will, even though we're now in April, this year will be a year of some big changes here that you'll see towards the end of summer and fall and into winter. The choice for these two books for our book subscription was about providing our subscribers with a little bit of a contrast in terms of a witchcraft path. There are so many ways to be witches in this world. We have myriad of traditions, we have myriad of people, and the beauty of being a witch is that so much of it is so individual. But so many of you who are new, who are still learning, are wondering, well, where do I fit? And these books are different in tone and different in, I think, aim than the books that we usually read. And in large part, that's because it's chaos magic. And so I also wanted to provide a way to, like, hey, this is a taste of chaos magic, because a lot of, again, what I want to do with the Witches Book subscription is to give you, the readers, as many options to taste from as possible so that you can begin to make choices about what pulls you and what doesn't, right? All of that is important, and it's something that's probably going to be evolving through the course of your entire witchcraft life. I think these two books help do that. The other part of it is that I want to continue to provide our group, our subscribers, in both subscriptions, a growing experience for contrast between one thing and another, because I want to give you as many tools as possible to make choices about what path you want to take, because we're going to be taking a very specific path in the future. And so for me, it's about empowering all of you with as much information as possible. And this kind of narrative, the tones of these books, the aims of this book, Chaos Magic specifically, gives enough of a contrast from what we've been dealing with before that I think will enable people to just have more information to make choices in the future. This is not about right and wrong, bad or good. It's just about flavor. We each have our own way of doing things, and necessarily the Witches Box is mine. I created it. I will continue to create it. And so as I move in a very specific direction, I think that creating opportunities for this kind of contrast in ways and paths and traditions and modalities will give all of you much more information to select in or select out of the train as it moves in a very different direction. More information on this will be coming out more and more and more as the year progresses, but this is why the intentions behind the choosings of these books came about. So that's kind of the summary. Now, I'm going to say really quickly, chaos magic isn't as much a tradition, and I don't know if people who are chaos magicians would necessarily term it or describe it this way, but for me, it's just kind of a way of approach. And it's a way of approach that is very much centered around magic and technique, or the technology of spellcasting, where whatever works is what goes. There's no necessarily a set of, this is how we do things, this is how we do this is how we do that, where you have, like, for instance, when you think about Wiccan witchcraft, there are specific spells, there are specific rituals, specific ways of marking certain events that even though there's room for individuality to kind of tweak a ritual here and there, the way they do things and what they approach and how they approach it is the same. That's not true of chaos magic. Chaos magic is really, and this is again my interpretation of it, people who identify as chaos magicians may say something a little differently, but for me it's like whatever works for me to get what I want is what works. And so where here at the Witches Box, and here's where the distinctions start to come in a little bit, where at the Witches Box here, I espouse practice in a really big way. Practice, practice, practice. Take the one thing, whatever it is, whether it's meditation, whether it's working with salt, whether it's working just with the elements, or whatever it might be, take it and practice and keep going and do it over and over and over again, not just because you'll learn that technique really well, but in the practicing, you start to really deepen and learn all these little nooks and crannies about the dynamic of what you're doing in a way that you wouldn't if you like hit it and run, right? I talk about this a lot in different ways in all the things that we do here at the Witches Box. Chaos magic isn't like that. Chaos magic is about hit it, did it work? It didn't, move. Let it go and move on to the next thing. And you move on to spell after spell after spell, or ritual after ritual after ritual until you hit the one that really works for you and gives you the most direct, successful results, and then you run with that. And there's no right and wrong here. There's no judgment here. It's just a matter of orientation and what you like, what you want, and what is going to suit your ultimate purpose. Chaos magic is really great about the I want what I want, and this is how I'm going to get it. I can hear a lot of you thinking about this right now, so I want to address what you're thinking, which is this. There is a lot of inner noise and story about, well, getting what you want or wanting what you want and getting what you want and pursuing what you want is selfish. It's really greedy. It's so capitalistic. Don't do that. We want what we want. It's okay to want what you want. And we need to start getting rid of all the guilt and all the story and all the noise that we have around that. A lot of that comes from our puritanical background, particularly in the Western culture. And it's really detrimental to a lot of areas in our lives that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. These books don't talk about that at all. But just let it be what it is. There are many ways, again, to be a witch and to walk that path in this world. Chaos magic is really, for me, about technology and what works and what doesn't. So I haven't read a lot of books right now at this point. Like I've had books in the past that I've read on chaos magic, but those were so very, and this is the thing, the tone is very different. There's no poetic prose. There's no like your internal mythology, right? There's none of that. It's like, oh, these are the formulas and this is how it works. Different from, and I'm going to get into this in a second, it does it that way, but different from the one whole book of like 1,000 spells with no context. Those are different things. I think that no matter what type of witch you are, reading chaos magic books can be incredibly helpful because it's just straight, almost straight technology in terms of different ways to achieve altered states, different ways to achieve a manifestation, to achieve a banishing. It's very technical in that way. And I think even if it's not your path, there's so much to be learned there. So I'm going to jump into the books. So The Chaos Protocols is by Gordon White. The subtitle is Magical Techniques for Navigating the New Economic Reality. Right off the bat, I'm just going to speak to the elephant in the room. Gordon White does a lot of things. He's got a podcast, he's got a website, like a podcast blog. I think he also has a couple of membership groups, and he's a writer. In the past several months, I actually don't know the timeline, he's made some very controversial statements regarding COVID, vaccination, and a bunch of other things. And so there's a lot of brouhaha about this, and there are people on both sides of the argument. As I said in last week's video, this was one of the choices that I made where it's like, yeah, he's made controversial statements. Where I stand on those statements is irrelevant. I didn't find them to be hurtful in the sense that, yeah, some people feel that they're so offensive that they're hurtful. I felt that the book was still worth reading because it really created an opportunity for a lot of discussion that we're going to go into right now. So there's that. This is an example of a choice that I made as I spoke to last week. He did something in this book that I felt was really important. I don't think he did it well, but I really appreciated it, and this is one of the reasons why I chose the book. Let me say that maybe the first third of the book, maybe less than the first third of the book, maybe the first quarter of the book, he spends a lot of time discussing economic theory and the economic climate at the time that he wrote the book, which I think was in 2017. It is bone-ass dry. And there were people who were like, yeah, I couldn't read it. And there were people who really enjoyed reading the history of why we came to be in the economic state in the Western world, predominantly in the United States. up until that point. And it was very educational. And I wanted to make it a point at the group, and I don't know if I did that. Just because you are able to very logically explain something doesn't necessarily mean that you are looking at it from a holistic lens. However, he gave a lot of information about the economic climate at the time. It is not something that you normally find in witchcraft books. It was fairly extensive for the amount of time he spent on it. And it wasn't at all magical, pagan, mystical. It was like, these are the economics of what's going on in the world right now, and these are the reasons why. And I felt that that was so important, however dry it may have felt, however different it may have felt in terms of, wait, I wanted a magic book. I wanted a witchcraft book. What the hell am I doing reading about economics? I felt it was so important because it's this formula that I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's a formula here. Even though he may not have intended for it to be a formula, I want it to be a formula. And I want it to be a formula that more and more people who are writers out there employ. Because later he goes on to different spells and rituals and things you can do to even the playing field in terms of your life economically, in terms of magic for money. What I loved is this. Again, I don't think he did it well because it almost felt like you were reading two different books. It didn't feel like it bridged those two things in a way that some people may have needed, but this is what I liked about it, and this is why I chose it. If we're going to be effective magicians or sorcerers or witches, you need to understand the energetic ocean in which you are operating. You can not know a single damn thing about economics and cast a money spell, and you can get that to manifest, sure. But when you know the energetic field, the energetic ocean in which you are trying to immerse yourself in and create a reality in, the more empowered and more impactful you're going to be in the way that you create your spells and the way that you manifest those spells. If you want to get really proficient at the energy and magic of money, you need to understand money and the way money moves and the way money works and what money can be and is in the world. So I loved that because it's like, yes, give us an education about this ocean that we want to swim in. I'm going to try to stick to the same metaphor throughout because you know I love to jump metaphors. In that sense, I loved it because it's like, yes, educate people on, if we're going to work in this venue, in this ocean, this particular energetic ocean, then let's really talk about what this is, how it moves, what's going on, what are the trends, what stifles a trend, what makes a trend flow. This is so important, and I love that he did this. I don't even know if that was necessarily his intention. I want to say that it was. I really loved it for that reason. And I chose this book for that reason, and to say that I would love for more books to do this. If we're going to talk about love, if we're going to talk about love magic, let's talk about the psychology of love. Let's talk about the soul of love. Let's talk about what love is supposed to really be beyond our dysfunctional issues around it. And then let's jump into the magic. I want to see more of that. I think that's such a wonderful and important formula. Other authors have done a little bit of this. The person that comes to mind, although I think that he did it not particularly in this way, but in talking about the mundanity of managing money, was Jason Miller. I just remembered the name of the book, is Financial Sorcery by Jason Miller. I believe that he did that in his book. And I really appreciate that. Let's get down to the entirety of the thing. Magic doesn't exist in a vacuum. Spells don't exist in a vacuum. Understand how things move and are in truth in the world in order for you to really get very specific and honed in on the energetic streams that you want to work with, not just this like throw out the wish and hope that it comes back. So I really appreciated that this happened in this book. Was it dry? Yeah, absolutely. Did you really want to have an economics lesson? Probably not. But you know what? It really serves a purpose. And so I really appreciated that. The other thing that I think was really great about this book is that there's a whole section on working with sigils, because sigils tends to be a very common chaos magic practice or tool, which we can have a whole day of talking about sigil work. But anyway, he has a section on sigils and he has a section on shoaling sigils, which I thought was really helpful. This is an example of how some of these chaos magic books can really be helpful because they give you just like good, helpful, informative, to the point and concise chunks of information on specific technology. And so he talks about sigils and how to work with them, but specifically in terms of shoaling sigils. We're not going to talk about what that is. Get the book if you need to, or look it up. Another person who talks about shoaling is Aidan Wachter. There are others as well, but those are the ones that come to mind. Shoaling sigils in order to get closer and closer and closer to the final aim. The closer we get in proximity to the energetic thing that we want to manifest, the higher our chances are of actually manifesting it. These are things that we don't really talk about in books where you just have a bunch of spells. You don't know why they work, how they work. There's strategy here. There is clear, critical thinking about how to really get to the thing that you really want. So I appreciated that about this book. So that's this. This is the Chaos Protocols by Gordon White. I would say just having reading the book and having that experience of the economic section in the beginning and then going into the work is a trend I want to see more of for sure. And then the shoaling section, phenomenal. I thought it was great. So there's that. Now, this book. Hands-on Chaos Magic. This is a beefier book. They're both dry in tone. This is what dry for me is. I'm so used to books. Like next month, we're going to be talking about and reading Danielle Dulsky's books. There are other books that we've read where there is more of a poetry, more of a mythology going on. It just operates for me in the realm of water, where there is the dreamlike soul and the way the soul operates and the way energy operates. That to me is always very poetic and lyrical and feels like it speaks to the organic nature of humanity and the way things work together and the way things are in relationship with each other. These two books don't do that. There is a dryness to them, even though, again, it's still valuable information. This is a pretty dry book. It's a big book, and it is, for the most part, nothing but exercise after exercise after exercise after exercise, ritual and spell tools for you to develop certain muscles in order to manifest more. And in that sense, was it fun reading? No, but it is such a great resource for these types of exercises to help hone your ability to alter your mind, your ability to shift consciousness, to go into trance, to do different work in different realms. It's really informative in that way. I think that it's an invaluable resource. Even though it's dry to read through, I would encourage that you read through the whole thing and then select specific things that you want to take and practice with over a long period of time, because I'm all about stretching it out for a long period of time. I really appreciated this book for that reason. Was it fun? No, but it talks about a lot of really important things. Like one of the things, resonance, sorcery, and material bases. Like there's a lot of great information here. I'm going to read to you the table of contents. Also, I'm going to only read to you the table of contents, which is pretty extensive. The exercise table of contents is like 4 pages long. It's like 110 items. There's a lot of work that can be pulled out of here and used that will benefit you no matter what your tradition is, no matter what your orientation is in witchcraft. Really helpful stuff. So let me really quickly read to you the table of contents for this book. The first chapter is disclaimers, warnings, definitions, and other oddities of writing. Second is making time for magic and relaxing. The third is breathing. Fourth is body positions. Fifth is enhancing your sensory perception. Sixth is using cognitive science and NLP in our magic. 7 is looking at ourselves. 8 is conditioning success. 9 is energetic manipulation 1. 10 is creating your own banishing and banishing examples from Andre's grimoire. 11 is why is trance needed in magic. 12 is energy but manipulation 2. 13 is shards of the self and the shadow. 14 is energy manipulation 3. 15 is energy manipulation 4 and practical shielding techniques. 16 is sigil magic 1, sigil creation. 17 is sigil magic 2, sigil magical enchantment. 18 is sigil magic 3, scrying sigils. 19 is sigil magic 4, sigil anchors. 20 is resonance, sorcery, and material bases, an introduction to talisman work. 21 is basic sympathetic magic. 22 is basic magical tools. 23 is divination energy games. 24, more energy games and visualization exercises. 25 is invocation theory. 26, invocation theory 2, the advanced stuff. 27 is invocational energy work, group work, and talisman work. 28 is evocation. 29 is evocation level 2. I got the power up mushroom. 30 is creating entities with energy and information. 31, giving form to concepts and ideas. 32, advanced practicum on entity creation. 33, beginning astral work. 34, art and the stories we tell. 35, cycles of moving. That's it. There is a lot here. Again, chaos magic is of the mind that you take what you want and leave the rest. There is some concern around some cultural appropriation, because my experience of chaos magicians and chaos magic in general is you just take what works and leave the rest without a whole lot of cultural context. So there can be blurry lines there. There are a couple of instances in this book where he says a couple of things that feel very appropriation-y, and it's a little cringeworthy, but again, take what works and leave the rest. this is a great tool to have in your toolbox because there's so much offered here that you can really just take the 1, 2, 3, 10 things that you feel would really support you and run with it. So there's that. Those are the 2 books. I know that some of you have read quite a few of the chaos magic books out there. I'd love to hear what your experiences are. Are you a practitioner? Have you practiced chaos magic before? At this point, we've been talking about sigils for such a long time. Where are you all at with that work? Do you enjoy it? Is it something that speaks to you as opposed to other types of magic? All of those questions answer below, please, because I'd love to hear about it. See you next week. Hope that you're well, and take care.